Tonight on Y News, Philippine inflation further accelerates to a new 5-year high of 4.6% in May. President Rodrigo Duterte urges South Korean businessmen to invest in the Philippines as he assures them protection against corruption. And the Philippine Overseas Labor Office in Kuwait resumes processing of household service workers' applications, emphasizing compliance with the deployment guidelines. Y News begins now.
From the UNTV News and Rescue Command Center in Quezon City, this is Y News.
Good evening. The Philippine inflation shows no sign of slowing down as it further accelerates to a new 5-year high of 4.6% in May. Rosalie Cos tells us why.
The Philippine Statistics Authority reports that inflation, or the movement of prices of basic goods and services, continues to spike. From 4.5% in April, it further accelerated to 4.6% rate in May. PSA explains the inflation is mainly driven by the prices of fish, corn, crude oil, and rice. However, the National Economic Development Authority, or NEDA, expects the inflation will taper off the following months, especially now that the oil exporting countries are considering to increase their production, which will lead to lower fuel prices in the international market.
This is still a bit higher than in April 2018, but we are seeing signs of tapering off of the inflation.
NEDA, Budget and Finance Department, also appealed to Congress to enact the Rice Tariffication Bill, which may help lower the price of rice by 7 pesos. The arrival of rice imports this month will also ease the price of the said staple food. Meanwhile, Budget Secretary Benjamin Jokno reiterates the measures the government is doing to relieve the effects of inflation, such as conditional and unconditional cash transfer program and fuel discount for public utility drivers. In the joint statement of NEDA, Finance and Budget Department, he notes the suspension of train law will not address inflation and will only hamper economic growth.
Suspending train and adopting other band-aid solutions will only have a minimal and short-term impact on inflation and will stifle our growth, further delaying our nation's progress toward becoming an upper middle income country by 2019, such that around 6 million families would be lifted out of poverty by 2022.
Rosalie Cos, UNTV News and Rescue, Malacanang.
Some senators urged the national government to release subsidies for those who have been affected by the implementation of the tax reform law. Senator Bamakino, meanwhile, calls on the Senate to support this bill that seeks to suspend the implementation of fuel excise tax hike. Nel Maribuhok explains why.
With the inflation rate spiking, many are worried that ordinary Filipinos can no longer sustain their daily needs. This prompted some senators to call for the speedy release of the subsidies provided under the tax reform law to give relief to families and sectors deeply affected by the high prices. Senator Grace Poe has delivered a letter to some government departments such as the Finance, Labor, Transportation, and Social Welfare and Development to formally request for the immediate implementation of the subsidies. Under the train law, these include fuel vouchers for jeepney drivers and operators, fare and rice discounts, and unconditional cash transfer program. Poe explains the subsidies should be speedily distributed as the country is already in the middle of the year and many are complaining of the high prices of products and services. Some senators have expressed the same sentiments.
There are a lot of complications, no? Kaya ang first option talaga ma-implement yung mga mitigating measures in the train law. Last hearing, May pa lang na-implement nila only 40% of the unconditional cash transfers. No?
Yung pinaka-maayos at pinaka-mainam na paraan, nung panahong tinaas po nila yung presyo ng bilihin, dapat handang-handa na po yung mga programang ito.
Senator Bamakino hopes that his colleagues will support this bill that seeks to suspend the implementation of imposing excise tax on petroleum products. Nel Maribuhok, UNTV News and Rescue, Senate of the Philippines.
The country's jobless rate declines at the start of 2018. According to the labor force survey of the Philippine Statistics Authority, from 5.7% in April 2017, it went down to 5.5% this April. PSA says the highest unemployment rates were registered in Ilocos, Calabarzon, and National Capital Region. The Philippine Overseas Labor Office in Kuwait resumes processing of applications for household service workers, but emphasizes that applicants and recruitment agencies must follow the guidelines along with the additional requirement. Mylene Soriano tells us why.
The Philippine Overseas Labor Office or POLO in Kuwait will now accept application for household service workers in the Gulf state.
And beginning today, for June 2018, our Labor Office or POLO will start accepting deployment documents of domestic worker, visa 20 workers for processing.
In an interview at the POLO office in Al Sadiq, Kuwait on Monday, Lamondot says they already received from the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration or POEA in Manila the guidelines on the resumption of the deployment of domestic workers to the Gulf state following the implementation of Administrative Order 254-A signed by Labor Secretary Silvestre Bello III, which officially lifted the deployment ban on domestic helpers to Kuwait. The POEA guidelines are in accordance with the Agreement on Employment of Domestic Workers signed by the two countries on May 11, 2018. According to the guidelines, a household service worker applicant should pass training from a POEA-accredited institution and should undergo orientation on the law, customs, and traditions of Kuwait. One new and important addition to the guidelines is the capacity of the employer to pay the proper amount of compensation.
Pero merong isang requirement na nadagdag at yan yung employer's proof of capacity to pay salary of the domestic workers. We will be meeting all the recruitment agencies so that we could agree on what kind of proof they will be requiring.
He adds that the Philippine recruitment agencies were directed to adhere to the POEA guidelines and help the government in its implementation. The Philippine Embassy in Kuwait also expects more personnel to efficiently assist all 260,000 overseas Filipino workers or OFWs in the state of Kuwait, wherein around 150,000 of the said number work as household service workers. Meanwhile, Lamondot conveys the Kuwaiti government's appreciation of the positive developments in its labor cooperation and diplomatic relations with the Philippines.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Kuwait, through the Office of the Deputy Minister, Foreign Minister, expressed appreciation for this new development, which is considered a good step for the two countries to move forward and strengthen their friendly bilateral relations.
The Philippine Embassy and Kuwait's Ministry of Foreign Affairs are constantly holding joint meetings to further discuss the provisions and the implementation of the signed Memorandum of Understanding. Mylene Soriano, UNTV News and Rescue, Kuwait.
President Rodrigo Duterte assures Korean businessmen that they will be safe while in the Philippines and urges them to shun corruption. Grace Casin tells us why, live from Gangnam, South Korea. Yes, Grace, go ahead.
Good evening, Darlene. President Rodrigo Duterte on Tuesday commits that South Korean businessmen will be safe while they are still in the Philippines. He gave the assurance as a South Korean government extends $4.9 million grant to enhance the capabilities of Philippine National Police, which includes vehicles and personal training. President Duterte also acknowledges that the Philippines is facing numerous law and order problems and asked that he be given until the end of the year to reorganize the Philippine National Police. The president adds he will appoint a representative that will process the documents of South Korean investors so they can avoid corruption. Duterte also tells them he fired several government officials linked to corruption. He also urges the South Korean businessman to shun corruption by reporting Filipino government officials who ask for money. President Duterte is expected to bring home $4.9 billion in investment and loan agreement from his official visit in South Korea. The said amount is expected to generate thousands of jobs for the Filipinos. Finance Secretary Carlos Dominguez III says the Korean government doubled its development assistance for Philippines from $500 million to $1 billion until 2022. $171.42 million of the amount will go to the construction of the Cebu International Container Port that seeks to increase the capacity of Cebu Port that caters the movement of goods and services in the Visayas region. $50 million will go to the irrigation projects, $100 million for the new Dumaguete Airport, and $41 million for the implementation of electronic receipt in all retail stores, making tax collection easier. The amount will also fund the rehabilitation of Marawi City. The Finance Secretary notes that though some of the amount are in loan, the Philippines will have no difficulty paying it since it only has 0.15% interest rate and is payable within 40 years with a 10-year grace period.
It is very, very generous of the Korean government. And certainly we can afford this kasi, you know, when they put the port, we will be charging port charges and goods will flow more quickly.
After his three-day visit here in South Korea, President Rodrigo Duterte is set to return to the Philippines tonight via commercial flight. And that's the latest here from South Korea. Back to you, Darlene.
Thank you, Grace Kasin, reporting live from Gangnam, South Korea. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court sets on July 24 the oral arguments on the petition of opposition senators against the withdrawal of the Philippines from the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, or ICC. Eddy also orders Foreign Affairs Secretary Alan Peter Cayetano, Executive Secretary Salvador Medialdea, Teddy Locsin Jr., and Chief Presidential Legal Counsel Salvador Panelo to comment on the petition. It can be noted that Senators Francis Pangilinan, Franklin Drilon, Bam Aquino, Laila de Lima, Risa Hontiveros, and Antonio Trillanes filed a petition for certiorari and mandamus last May 16, seeking to declare the withdrawal of the Philippines from the ICC as null and void. The Senate Committee on Economic Affairs begins its deliberation on the proposed establishment of a special defense economic zone within Camp General Antonio Luna in Limay, Bataan. The bill aims to make the area accessible for inclusive business prospects and accelerate the inflow of top-notch material on advanced weaponry. Senator Sherwin Gatchalian believes the measure will help the Philippine Armed Forces in the production of basic weapons and other ammunitions. Grab Philippines offers to provide subsidy for its partner drivers. Grab Country head Brian Koo explains this is to help their drivers recover income losses after the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board suspended their 2 peso per minute travel time charge in their fare structure. The subsidy amount will depend on the number of hours rendered by each driver per ride booking. Who, however, clarifies the proposal is still being reviewed and cannot detail for now its exact implementation.
On Y News tonight, Pag-asa tells the public to brace for the onset of the rainy season. Supreme Court orders the Solicitor General to comment on the ouster appeal of former Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Sereno. And UNTV becomes first TV station to receive certificate to operate aerial drone in the country. Good evening. The local government units begin activating their operation centers and barangay rescue units, while the Education Department reminds parents and schools to observe protocols on class suspension. Ray Pelayo explains why.
The Philippine Atmospheric, Geophysical and Astronomical Services Administration, or Pag-asa, warns the public to brace for the onset of rainy season. Pag-asa says torrential rains might begin pouring in July, while tropical cyclones that might severely affect the country usually form in the last quarter of the year.
Halos maghapong ulan, ganun po yung characteristic ng monsoonal rains. Halos maghapong ulan, pero July to August po yan.
With this, Pag-asa advises parents and students to always bring umbrella and raincoats. The Department of Education, meanwhile, reminds parents and school administrators to observe protocol on suspending classes during tropical cyclone. When signal number 1 is hoisted, classes in public and private preschool and kindergarten are automatically suspended. When signal number 2 is up, classes are cancelled from preschool to high school, while all levels will be suspended under signal number 3. But in the event of torrential rains without storm, they should await the announcement of the local government or the school. Officials and personnel should also know what to do when flood threatens their school buildings.
Kapag alam nila na binabaha ang unang palapag ng kanilang gusali, iaangat lahat ang mga gamit sa ikalawang palapag.
The Quezon City government, meanwhile, opens its Emergency Operations Center for 24 hours a day and empowers its barangay rescue units. CCTV cameras are also set up in various areas so they can respond to any flooding incident and decide on whether to suspend classes.
Mayroon threat, then collectively we recommend to the mayor if there would be a suspension or not.
QC government also assures its drainage system is working but is concerned of flooding in huge construction sites like the Skyway 3 in G. Araneta and MRT 3 in Commonwealth Avenue. Ray Pilayo, UNTV, News and Rescue, Quezon City.
The government's subsidized rice varieties will be back in markets this week as the first tranche of rice imports arrive in the country. According to National Food Authority spokesperson Rex Estoperes, more than 200,000 of the 5 million sacks of imported rice were already unloaded in Subic and Surigao ports. They will begin transporting these to Pampanga, Bataan, and Zambales tonight. Estoperes warns to fine exporters if they fail to deliver the stocks until June 15. With this, the NFA expects to lower rice prices as tightness in the grain supply eases. A school in Pasig City cancels its classes today and evacuates their students from buildings. Aiko Miguel tells us why.
Elementary school annex in Pasig City cancels its classes after dark smoke was seen billowing in a nearby residential building at past 9 in the morning earlier. School Principal Christopher Santos says more than 2,000 students were immediately evacuated from the 6-story school building.
The two buildings are just a few meters apart, so yung danger ng suffocation, isa yun sa mga iniiwasan.
Gina de la Cruz is one of the parents who immediately rushed to the school to pick up her child after hearing of the fire incident.
Takbo namin, lahat kami mga nanay, siyempre natakot din kami.
Teresita Biazon, a vendor in front of the school for 9 years, gave a sigh of relief after seeing her 5 grandchildren safe.
Wala naman kasing damage sa school, di naman dirang nasunog yung kabilang building, doon pa sa likuran.
The school principal says classes will resume tomorrow.
May Bunga Elementary School Annex. Safe po ang eskwelahan natin.
Aiko Miguel, UNTV News and Rescue, Pasig City.
The Supreme Court orders the Solicitor General to comment on the motion for reconsideration filed by Maria Lourdes Sereno against her ouster as the country's top magistrate. Maya Bermudez tells us why.
The legal battle between Solicitor General Jose Calida and former Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Sereno is not yet over. This after the High Tribunal directs Soljan Calida to submit a comment on the motion for reconsideration filed by Sereno seeking reversal on the ouster ruling. Sereno argued in her motion that she may only be removed through impeachment proceedings. It can be recalled that Sereno was removed as the top SC Justice on May 11 by her peers with a vote of 8-6 in an unprecedented grant of Calida's quo warranto petition.
The court directed the Solicitor General to comment on the respondent's ad cautela motion for reconsideration within a non-extendable period of 5 days from notice.
Sereno's supporters meanwhile hope her peers' earlier decision will be reversed.
Malapit ang isang 8-6 vote, lalo na sa isang napakabigat na question na ganito kalalim ang implikasyon sa ating konstitusyon. An 8-6 vote is very close. Kailangan lang magbago ng ang isip ng isa o dalawa, iba na yung resultang makukuha mo.
They also maintain that President Rodrigo Duterte influenced the decision of the SC members.
Kapag natuloy ang botohan at natalo ang motion for reconsideration, tiyak ang kasunod na niyan ay si Pangulong Duterte mag-a-appoint na ng Supreme Court Chief Justice na malamang kakampi sa kanya.
While former President Benigno Aquino III believes Sereno's case is far different from the fate suffered by impeached late Chief Justice Renato Corona.
Karma, may kasalanan. Siguro ano kasalanan doon? First questions. Ano bang domain? Parang nahirapan ako magsalita tungkol kay Chief Justice Corona. Hindi dahil hindi ako naniwala sa lahat ng lumabas doon. Pero patay na yung tao.
Sereno only needs one justice who had voted for her removal to change the majority vote and overturn the decision. Mai Bermudez, UNTV News and Rescue, Manila.
Australian missionary Patricia Fox insists she did not violate the terms and conditions of her missionary visa. In her 22-page reply submitted to the Department of Justice today, Fox denies the Bureau of Immigration's allegation that she engaged in partisan political activities, prompting the cancellation and downgrade of her visa to a temporary visitor's visa lasting only for 30 days. Fox earlier asked the DOJ to review and reverse BI's order, arguing that this is not in accordance with the Constitution and law and jurisprudence. BI is yet to file its comment on the petition. A Muslim community leader believes that more Muslims will go back to Mindanao once the Bangsamoro Basic Law has been enacted into law, but a political analyst doubts the Congress will approve the version of BBL originally crafted by the Bangsamoro Transition Commission. Rosalie Cos explains why.
Muslim community leader Imam Amiruddin Haji Noor relocated in Manila from Mindanao to live in peace. He longs to return to his homeland one day. And with the impending approval of the proposed Bangsamoro Basic Law, he believes it will bring long-lasting peace, which in turn will encourage more Muslims to go back to the region.
Pati rin kami, siyempre, doon din kami galing sa Mindanao, na kaya naman po kami napunta dito sa Manila kasi gusto namin na yung tahimik at hindi gulo.
The Bicameral Conference Committee will convene on July 9 to 13 to reconcile the significant differences in the proposed measure. This include power sharing, taxation, and areas to be placed under the Bangsamoro region. The lawmakers eye to ratify the bill on July 23rd in time for President Rodrigo Duterte's third State of the Nation address. But political analyst Professor Thio doubts the Congress will approve the original version of the PBL, which was crafted by the Bangsamoro Transition Commission. He explains the Congress will have to amend the charter first before approving its provisions. It can be noted that the Senate and the House modified some of the BTC's proposal but asserted it is not a watered-down version and could withstand legal scrutiny. However, he ascertains that BBL is necessary for the advancement of the proposed federal form of government being pushed by the Duterte administration.
Kaya importanteng usapin yung BBL, importanteng usapin yung federalismo. Itong pagkakataon na to ay napaka-significant at sayang lang kung mapababayaan natin.
Rosalie Cos, UNTV News and Rescue, Manila.
The Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency is still revalidating the names included in its new drug watch list. But PIDEA Director General Aaron Aquino reveals at least 7 congressmen, 60 mayor and some vice mayors, uniformed personnel and government employees are in the list, as well as other elected officials and several PIDEA officials. Most of these personalities are from Calabar Zone, Northern Mindanao, and the autonomous region in Muslim Mindanao. Once the validation process is completed, PIDEA will file complaints against the said officials.
Wala namang palakasan yan. Alam mo naman si Presidente, malakas ka man sa kanya, kaalyado man siya, wala siyang pakialam. Basta't na nasa narco politics ka, period.
Meanwhile, more than 70 million worth of shabu were seized in 2 simultaneous anti-drug operations in Cavite and Parañaque City. 4 suspects were nabbed in said operations that yielded a total of 11 kilograms of shabu. PIDEA says they launched the operation after receiving report from the Bureau of Customs about a suspicious package traced from a freight forwarding service at Clark Freeport Zone in Pampanga. The suspects are now facing charges for violating the Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002. Authorities arrest on Monday night the suspect in the killing of an ombudsman assistant prosecutor earlier that day. The suspect, identified as Angelito Galvez Avenido alias Moymoy, was arrested in Barangay Culiat. Avenido stabbed to death 5-month pregnant attorney Madonna Joy Tanyag along a sidewalk in Visayas Avenue in Quezon City on her way back to her office. Tanyag was pronounced dead on arrival at East Avenue Medical Center. Police recovered from the Avenido the victim's belongings, including her ID. Authorities are still investigating possible motive for the attack, though they suspect it was a case of robbery. Joanano, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
A bigger Eddy's Awards is expected this July. Leslie Longbowen tells us why.
Outstanding names and works in the film industry this year will be recognized at the Eddies. Nominees were picked by the Society of Philippine Entertainment Editors, or SPEED.
The Eddies is really about the Filipino artist, and we would like to shine the spotlight on them to really encourage them to continue producing quality movies.
Prior to the awards night, certificates of recognition have been handed to the nominees in the Best Original Theme Song, Best in Sound Design, Best Musical Scoring, Best Visual Effects, Best Editing, Best Production Design, Best Cinematography, Best Screenplay, Best Supporting Actor, Best Supporting Actress, Best Actor, Best Actress, Best Director, and Best Film. Special awards will also be given this year.
I believe we are recognizing icons of various generations during the awards night. I think we begin with the 60s decades through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And we will also be recognizing the younger generation of film producers this year.
Produced by Wish 1075, the Eddy's 2018 Awards Night will be held on July 9th. Leslie Longbowen, UNTV News and Rescue, Philippines.
UNTV makes history as the first Philippine TV station certified to operate aerial drones. Monokson tells us why.
It was in 2013 when the first ever UNTV drone flew over Tacloban, Leyte. UNTV's drone camera was able to capture the massive damages caused by the super typhoon Yolanda. Because of this, the public was able to have wider perspective in the field of journalism in the country. With the use of drones, UNTV is able to employ another method of news gathering that allows it to cover important events within and outside of the country. This include the Benham Rice Expedition, Boracay Closure, Palarong Pambansa, Laguna Fish Pen Demolition, Zambales Mining Issues, Mount Mayon Eruption, Barangay and SK Elections, and the Marawi Siege. Aside from news, UNTV's use of drones also helps in gathering information that could help people avoid calamities and save lives. UNTV drone was able to capture videos of the earthquake drills, the yearly procession in Quiapo, accidents like crane collapse, fire accidents, floodings, and the worsening traffic condition in Metro Manila. Some were amazed with the videos taken by the UNTV drone, such as the New Year celebrations, opening of classes, PMA alumni homecoming, Banawe rice terraces, hot spring in Bicol, and tourist spots across the country.
So we will continue to enhance the use of our drone para sa news and rescue team na ating binibigyan ngayon ng pansin. At gusto nating mas makakita pa ng ibang mga technology kung paano natin maximize yung gamit ng drone.
The UNTV has long been complying with government regulations on the use of drones. Because of this, the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines gives UNTV an operator certificate of registration, making it the first ever Philippine TV station that can legally operate drones in the country.
We would like to congratulate UNTV for being the first ever na TV station to comply with the civil aviation regulation na nakakuha na sila ng operator certificate. We hope na all the news agencies will follow on your steps na mag-acquire din ng certificate dahil para din siya sa safety ng ating flying public, airspace natin.
UNTV drone pilots composed of cameramen and news reporters are also CAAP licensed, as well as all UNTV aerial drones containing control number from the agency. All its drone pilots have undergone training in the UNTV Drone Academy under the guidance of CAAP and Mr. Public Service Kuya Daniel Razon.
Nakikita ko din na later on ay mas maghihigpit yung regulations natin with regard to flying drones. Kaya mas maganda na sa mas maagang panahon ay magkaroon tayo ng magandang preparation na alam natin yung safety, yung legalities, where to fly and where not to fly, and especially how to fly it properly.
Public service has always been part of all UNTV projects and activities. UNTV also pioneered the news and rescue in the Philippines with the use of technologies such drones, hailing it the country's public service channel. Mon Hokson, UNTV News and Rescue, Quezon City.
Stay tuned for William Thio. I'm Angelo Castro III. Good evening.
Good evening. Here are the top stories on Y News Tonight. The Philippine Statistics Authority reports that inflation shows no signs of slowing down as it further accelerates to a new 5-year high of 4.6% in May. It is slightly higher than the recorded 4.5% in April, which is mainly driven by prices of fish, corn, crude oil, and rice. However, the National Economic Development Authority, or NEDA, expects the inflation will taper off next month as oil exporting nations consider to increase production to lower market fuel prices. Budget Secretary Benjamin Diokno, meanwhile, reiterates the measures of the government to relieve the effects of inflation, further noting that tax reform law suspension will only hamper economic growth.
Suspending trade and adopting other band-aid solutions will only have a minimal and short-term impact on inflation and will stifle our growth, further delaying our nation's progress toward becoming an upper middle income country by 2019, such that around 6 million families would be lifted out of poverty by 2022.
President Rodrigo Duterte assures that South Korean businessmen will be safe while they are in the Philippines. He gave the assurance as the South Korean government extends a $6.6 million grant to enhance the capabilities of the Philippine National Police, which includes vehicles and personal training. Duterte also urges the South Korean investors to report Filipino government officials who ask for money, adding that he will appoint a representative that will process their documents to avoid corruption. President Duterte will bring home $4.9 billion in investment and loan agreement from his official visit in South Korea, expected to generate over 50,000 jobs for the Filipinos. The Finance Secretary, meanwhile, notes that though some of the amounts are in loan, the Philippines will have no difficulty paying it since it only has a 15 interest rate and is payable within 40 years with a 10-year grace period.
It is very, very generous of the Korean government. And certainly we can afford this kasi, you know, when they put the port, we will be charging port charges and goods will flow more quickly.
In other news, the Philippine Overseas Labor Office in Kuwait resumes processing of applications after receiving a copy of the guidelines on the assumption of Filipino household service workers deployment from the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration. This is in accordance to the agreement signed by the Philippines and Kuwait on May 11 for the protection of OFWs. POLO-Kuwait says that according to the guidelines, a household service worker applicant should pass training from accredited institutions and should undergo orientation on the law, customs, and traditions of Kuwait. Applicants and recruitment agencies should also follow the additional requirements emphasizing on the employer's capacity to pay proper compensation.
Pero merong isang requirement na nadagdag at yan yung employer's proof of capacity to pay salary of the domestic workers. We will be meeting all the recruitment agencies so that we could agree on what kind of proof they will be requiring.
The Philippine Embassy and Kuwait's Ministry of Foreign Affairs are constantly holding joint meetings to further discuss the implementation of the signed Memorandum of Understanding. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court orders Solicitor General Jose Calida to comment on the appeal of former Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Sereno on the ouster ruling. Sereno argued in her motion that she may only be removed through impeachment proceedings. It can be recalled that Sereno was removed as the top SC Justice on May 11 by her peers with a vote of 8-6 in an unprecedented grant of Calida's quo warranto petition.
The court directed the Solicitor General to comment on the respondent's ad cautela motion for reconsideration within a non-extendable period of 5 days from notice.
Sereno supporters meanwhile hope her peers' earlier decision will be reversed. Sereno's only needs one justice who had voted for her removal to change the majority vote and overturn the said decision.
Malapit ang isang 8-6 vote, lalo na sa isang napakabigat na question na ganito kalalim ang implikasyon sa ating konstitusyon. An 8-6 vote is very close. Kailangan lang magbago ng ang isip ng isa o dalawa, iba na yung resultang makukuha mo.
UNTV becomes the first Philippine TV station certified to operate aerial drones after it was granted with Operator Certificate of Registration by the Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines, or CAAP. CAAP says UNTV is the first ever station to comply with the Civil Aviation Regulation after registering all its drones and training and licensing all its pilots composed of cameramen and news reporters. With the use of drones, UNTV is able to employ another method of news gathering that allows it to cover important events within and outside of the country. It was in 2013 when the UNTV first flew its drone over Tacloban, Leyte to capture the massive damages caused by Super Typhoon Yolanda, giving the public a wider perspective in the field of journalism.
We would like to congratulate UNTV for being the first ever na TV station to comply with the Civil Aviation Regulation na nakakuha na sila ng operator certificate. We hope all the news agencies will follow on your steps na mag-acquire din ng certificate dahil para din siya sa safety ng ating flying public, airspace natin.
So we will continue to enhance the use of our drone para sa news and rescue team na ating binibigyan ngayon ng pansin. At gusto nating mas makakita pa ng ibang mga technology kung paano natin mamamaximize yung gamit ng drone.
The Philippine Atmospheric, Geophysical and Astronomical Services Administration, or PAGASA, warns the public to brace for the onset of the rainy season. PAGASA says torrential rains might begin pouring next month, while hard-hitting tropical cyclones usually form in the last quarter of the year. With this, the authorities remind parents and students to always bring umbrellas and to observe protocol on class suspension when there is a tropical cyclone. Under Signal Number 1, classes in public and private preschool and kindergarten are automatically suspended, while preschool to high school under Signal Number 2 and all levels under Signal 3. The local government and schools, meanwhile, will have the discretion to cancel classes during heavy rains that are not brought by a tropical cyclone.
Halos maghapong ulan, ganun po yung characteristic ng monsoonal rains. Halos maghapong ulan, pero July to August po yan.
And for the news abroad, here's Eric Ferrer from Dongdaemun, South Korea. Eric, good evening.
Good evening, William. The White House announces the tentative schedule for the upcoming Trump-Kim summit next week. The White House spokeswoman Sarah Sanders says President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un are tentatively scheduled to meet at 9 a.m. Singapore time on June 12. The announcement of the timing for the first meeting between the two leaders came just 3 days after Trump hosted a senior North Korean delegation at the White House bearing a letter from Kim. Trump, who had previously canceled the summit, abruptly announced the meeting was back on. Asked about the contents of Kim's letter, Sanders declined to get into the specifics, but added it seems preparations are continuing to move forward and that good progress has been made. Around 2,000 people continue to protest in Jordan, while a Chinese man who swims along the border with North Korea believes a more open Pyongyang would be more beneficial. Dulce Alarcon tells us why.
In Jordan, around 2,000 Jordanians continued to protest near the Prime Ministry of Amman on Monday over new income tax law, despite the resignation of the Prime Minister. A ministerial source said King Abdullah appointed Omar al-Razaz, a former World Bank economist, to form the new government after accepting Hani Molki's resignation following the country's biggest protest in years. Public anger has grown over government policies since a steep general sales tax hike earlier this year and the abolition of bread subsidies, both measures driven by the International Monetary Fund. Unions representing tens of thousands of employees in both public and private sectors have called for a general strike on Wednesday after their demands for the bill to be scrapped were rejected by the government. In the U.S., Starbucks Corporation Executive Chairman Howard Schultz is stepping down, effective June 26, fueling speculations that the outspoken liberal-leaning executive will make a U.S. presidential bid. 64-year-old Schultz has been with Starbucks for nearly 4 decades and built it into one of the world's most powerful global brands. In recent years, he has repeatedly denied that he would make a move into politics, but he appeared to be more open to the idea of running for public office in a TV interview last week. In China, a Chinese fitness enthusiast who swims along the Chinese border with North Korea says he sees benefit in a more open North Korea. Leonger squeezes on a pair of fins, secures a pair of goggles, and plunges into the Yellow River for a morning swim along the border between China and North Korea every day. Despite decades of reported tensions, flowing through the often murky water that divided them has never been an issue for the 69-year-old and his fellow swimmers. Climbing onto North Korean soil, however, has always been forbidden. For Lee, it makes sense for North Korea to open up its borders to China, its main trading partner and ally. Dulce Alarcon, UNTV News and Rescue, China.
And those are the latest news from other parts of the world. Back to you, William.
Thank you very much, Eric Ferrer from Dongdaemun, South Korea. And those are the reasons behind the news. June 5, 2018, I am William Thio. Because we need to know, we will always ask why. Thank you for watching Y News.